Hi everyone, this is Liane and this is From the Heart. And after a bit of a break, because I needed one during the holidays and sickness and all that stuff, I'm back and like with like the perfect topic. It's like because it's about regulating glucose, and it kind of happens when we have all these new intentions and we're trying to be more mindful of what we're, putting in our bodies or doing with our bodies and things like that. And so I have like the perfect guest because she really doesn't want to instill fear. Whenever I ask her a question about the body, she just comes back to me with like a answer that's just really easy to understand, and then you can start kind of like doing the thing that works for you and your body. And she also happens to have had been one of my clients, um and so I've been to her births, and it feels so nice to have clients on my podcast, and having built a community from like, what I used to do. A really big reason why I want to talk about glucose stuff is because when I was a midwife, excuse me, my clients who were diagnosed with diabetes had to do the research on their own for what helped them. And thankfully, I love nutrition, and I think food is, a love language, and I think it's a pleasure to eat 3 to 5 to 7 times a day. um, so like I kind of dove into a little bit of that, but of course I'm not like an expert, and like more an expert in birth and not so much regulating your glucose and stuff. And so I wanted to put out information for people, and it won't be specific to gestational diabetes, but just regulating our own sugars, and then adding a few other things in our lives, maybe throughout the year, so that we can just kind of get to better health and live better and all of that. So, Jess, would you like to tell us who you are?
Oh, so I'm Jess. I'm a holistic nutritionist. I graduated 2 years ago from the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition. But for me, it's been a lifelong journey of discovering the power of food. When I was in my late teens, I started developing severe acne, and it really impacted my self-esteem and my well-being on all levels. And thankfully, I quickly made some links between what I was eating and how it was impacting my skin. And actually, further down the line, I also realized that like anger even affected my skin. Or, sometimes it's like the chicken and the egg, like what comes first. Um, but I I proceeded to change what I was eating. I was eating a lot of sugar. So I grew up like, in the 80s where it was pogos and Pop Tarts and Kraft Dinner and all the things. And my parents were amazing parents, but they were not well educated on food like most people. We don't learn this in school, and whether like depending what kind of families we come from. Um, and I think parents just got so busy, and like women went to work and they got so busy that food was not a priority anymore. So, anyways, I was exposed to all these, processed foods, and I developed a sugar addiction very, very young. And when I say addiction, like serious addiction, where I would like steal money from my parents to go buy chocolate bars. I would steal candy from the grocery store. I was very sneaky. I would go to my friend's house and eat all their caramel bars, like sugar, like to the nth level. Like I'm really, really lucky to not have diabetes right now. And maybe I caught myself just on time to not develop diabetes, although diabetes is reversible, type 2 diabetes. But when I changed my the way I ate, but also I stopped looking at myself in the mirror because as I said, acne really has a psychological impact as well. So, and within 2, 3 weeks, 80% of my acne was gone. After I did like a pretty intense cleanse to like remove all the inflammation. So I did do something very drastic. And, I think sometimes drastic measures are needed when we're in a kind of a drastic, intense situation like I was. Um, but I came back to balance. I came back to a new way of eating after my cleanse. And it was life-changing because, you know, you feel really ugly when you have acne, even though people don't see you the way you see yourself. People see, like when I look at someone with acne, I can see their beauty and I can see who they really are. But when you have it, it's like really devastating. So that started a whole process of like, wow, like food has such a huge impact. So I started like researching and just cooking differently. And it was a long journey. I mean, a really long journey. I still struggled for a long time. And part of it could have been too with like lots of antibiotics when I was little for my ears, and that, you know, can destroy your gut flora, and then you can crave sugar even more. So I don't know exactly why I became a sugar addict, if it was partly emotional or my gut microbiome or combination of all the things, and I'm not consuming enough protein. So we're going to talk about all those things. But for me, it's like I would say it's one of my most dear subjects and passions, because I know, and nutrition as a whole, but especially now, I'm like, wow, like it's balancing your blood sugar is the one thing that can really um, help you take a hold of your life, of your health. That's like number one, because as we will discover as we talk, like it's really sets the stage for so many diseases that we see today, you know, which starts with obesity, and that sets the stage for high blood pressure, high triglycerides, cholesterol, all the things. And we have a very ill society. Um, so this number is from like 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, they said that 89 million Americans were pre-diabetic. This is not the diabetes, this is the pre-diabetic. And then 12 million Canadians were pre-diabetic, meaning they have metabolic syndrome, meaning they're overweight and they have trouble with their blood sugar. They're either dysglycemic or hyperglycemic, or like combination of hyper. Most people are dysglycemic until we can define all those terms.
Yeah, because what does, I'm like, okay.
The sugar roller coaster. Yeah. So maybe if we want, we can go through the terms. So then, and then we can talk about how we balance our blood sugar. And it's not as hard as we think. And I think that's what like makes me angry sometimes. It's like it's actually quite simple, but we've been sold a lot of lies. And you know, I was just thinking today how when you go into a grocery store, like when I go into a superstore, the first thing I see is like this wall of candy and cookies and like all the things that are just full of processed sugar. And you know, if you go to the grocery store hungry, you're like vulnerable to like buy these things they seem okay because there's aisles full of processed food. You know, the middle aisles of the grocery store is like full of these pretend foods. They're so transformed that like sometimes our bodies don't even really fully know what to do with them, and they cause inflammation. But yeah, you can think, oh, it must be okay to eat this because everyone's buying it, and you know, it's everywhere and it's so abundant. So we're just trapped in this kind of perpetual cycle of buying these very addictive and very destructive processed foods. So yeah, my goal is to help people go back to like whole foods and yeah, rediscovering what really fuels our bodies. Like we ate, and that's the thing, we ate like this for thousands of years. It's only in the last century that we've just really changed our way of eating. So the combination of like processed food with less movement has really thrown people under the bus, and like that's why we see such a high rate of obesity, because people are sitting at desks more, and they're more stressed, and they have less time to cook, so they just go for the quick things, and then they're just in this bad cycle, and then they're tired, so they don't want. I see this all the time. Oh, but I'm so tired. I can't cook. I'm so tired. I'm like, yeah, but if you like just make a little effort and cook a healthy meal for yourself, you'll feel better, and then tomorrow it won't be as hard to cook a meal. But it's like, yeah, how do you break that cycle, right? So I can start with a few definitions. Is that what? Yeah. Okay. So we're going to talk about, yeah, so what is So blood sugar. So basically, when we talk about blood sugar, there's different kinds of sugars, but the one that we measure is glucose. That's a monosaccharide. So that's a simple sugar. So it's broken down, from starch. So maybe let's look at where carbohydrates, which are starches, sugars, and fiber. So these are carbohydrates. And sugar comes from starches, and there's also simple sugars, right, that we find in fruits. So where these come from is from plants. So the plant will take the carbon from the carbon dioxide from the air and the water from the ground. So carbohydrate, and with the energy of the sun, will make sugar, which is, through a process called photosynthesis. So plants make sugar, and they store it in their roots, their stems, their flowers, their fruits. In all parts of the plant, there's these carbohydrates. Starches are complex sugars. That means they are chains of glucose. So it's like many molecules bound together. So these are the starches. They're the reserve of the plant. So when we consume starches, like things like potatoes, sweet potatoes, all the root vegetables and squashes and whole grains, our bodies have to break them down to simple sugars to be absorbed, right? And then we have the fiber from the plant. Actually, although it's classified as a carbohydrate, but it does not have any impact on our blood sugar. So when we're going to talk about carbs, we're mainly talking about complex sugars, starches, and simple sugars. So the glucose, the fructose, the galactose from milk. But fiber has a vital role. So it's almost like its own category because, let's say we're having broccoli and celery and all these things. They're really rich in fiber, but they're low in the other carbohydrates, and the starches and sugars are very low. So it's almost like its own category because we actually need so much fiber to feed our microbiome and to stay regular. And that's a whole other subject. But yeah, so carbohydrates, fiber, starches, and sugars. So in the human body, we have about 5 liters of blood circulating in our body. And just to give you an idea, there's only 5 grams of sugar in our whole blood right now. Like you and I talking to each other was 5 liters of blood going through our body, and there's 5 grams, which is a teaspoon. So that's a very, very small amount. If it's like, it's a gallon and a half. It's like think about this big, massive gallon and a half, and then it's only a teaspoon of sugar. Yeah. So, which means that anything over 5 grams. So as soon as there more sugar comes in, what happens is our body has this hormone called insulin. Let me just make sure I didn't skip something. I'm trying to go with my notes here.
Yeah, that's really interesting that we only need just that little bit. And like if I eat more, I don't know, like I don't know how to measure, but yeah, it's interesting to hear you.
Yeah, so glucose, and that's the glucose, right? So it's not the fructose, it's not the other sugars, it's the glucose. Which is the most abundant molecule, which is like the fuel that our brains, our muscles use. All the cells use glucose to produce energy and to keep us alive. Like we can't function without glucose. But the thing is, our body can make glucose. So we can take our fats and our proteins, and we can take anything really in our body. Well, not anything, but the fat reserves and even the protein can be transformed into glucose. And that's how important it is that, we always have a way to make glucose. And that's another hormone called glucagon. So when our blood sugar is a bit low, glucagon will come in and will pull from our reserves, from our muscles, the glycogen in our muscles and our liver, and will bring glucose into our bloodstream. And then insulin takes it from our blood after we eat, a big meal. Our blood sugars will go up, insulin will come in, It's secreted from the pancreas, and so it's the hormone that stores glucose into our liver and into our muscles for later use. Because we always need it, but we can't always be eating, right? So, so we eat. There's insulin, sugar. So sugar is broken down. I guess I should explain how it's broken down. So we eat these plant foods. So carbs are one of three macronutrients. So we need carbs, we need proteins, and we need fats to be healthy. And they each have their role, but I'm going to specifically talk about carbohydrates for now. So carbohydrates are first broken down in our mouth with an enzyme called amylase. So as soon as we eat bread or potatoes or any kind of starch or sugar, we start breaking it down through our saliva. So it's called salivary amylase. And then it goes into our stomach. There's gastric amylase. So it continues to be broken down in the stomach. But the bulk of it is actually done in the intestine with pancreatic enzymes. There's a bit of feedback. Can you hear me properly?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Mm-hmm. And then the pancreatic enzymes are more specific, like the lactase will break down lactose, sucrase will break down sucrose. So all the different starches have a specific enzyme that comes and breaks them down all the way to simple sugars, which are glucose, fructose, and galactose. Galactose is from milk. Fructose is from fruits, and glucose is mostly from starches. So, yeah, that's how we break them down. Let me just go back to my notes here. So yeah, so we have these two hormones that are kind of counter hormones. So I'm sorry, I can hear myself. It was fine at first, but now I can hear my voice. Okay, try not to be distracted. So we have insulin. Insulin, as soon as we have sugar coming through our intestine into the circulation, insulin is secreted from our pancreas and ushers it into our muscle cells and into our liver. And by the way, fructose is metabolized differently. It's only in the liver. Yeah, we can talk about that later, but we'll focus on glucose. And then, so the problem is that we eat these very carbohydrate-heavy meals, right? Yeah. Oftentimes. And they spike sugar. So what we've discovered is that a lot of people have these huge insulin spikes because of the amount of sugar that we consume in carbohydrates. And then a lot of insulin is needed. And oftentimes the blood sugar will then, that's the roller coaster I was talking about, will come down really low, and then we want something sweet again. So then we are kind of stuck on this roller coaster where we have high blood sugar, lots of insulin, and then it comes back really low. We don't feel so good, or we feel like we need to eat something, and then we can keep going like this. And then the other hormone, glucagon. So too much insulin will shut down the production of glucagon. So oftentimes, especially if we're snacking in between meals, we're constantly have insulin in our blood. And insulin is a fat storing. Oh yeah, that's one thing I forgot to say. After we've stored sugar into our muscles and liver, we store it in our fat cells. And that's why people, more and more, we have this obesity thing happening because we're over-consuming these carbs and sugars, which are hidden in everything, right? Like yogurt, crackers, they're just hidden all over the place that we don't even realize. So we're very addicted to them. So we store extra glucose in our fat cells, and then if we are in a fasted state, which is ideal, so we want to have a break in between our meals so that our body has a break, our intestine can be cleared out. And then what happens is our glucagon, our counter hormone, will come up and it will start burning fat, and we'll use fat as fuel. And that is actually ideal, and that is how we maintain metabolic flexibility. So we say we have a healthy metabolism, meaning we can burn fat in between meals. We don't need to be eating all the time and keep going on this roller coaster. We can use fat as fuel. So one of my favorite things to do with people is to revolutionize their breakfast, because I think that is, as a society, where we fail the most.
Yeah, I do.
You know, even though we have all this information, and it goes to show how habits and like culture is so strong, because we know so much now, and we're still like, you know, eating toast and cereal and all these very, very rich in carbohydrate meals that are really low in protein and low, sometimes even low in fat. And, you know, there was a whole trend of low fat, right, that really messed with people's minds. But, you know, fat is so important. It's one of our macronutrients. It protects us. It's what our brain is made of. Every cell has like a layer of fat. It's really important. And it's not fat that makes us fat. If there's still people out there that believe that, it's actually the extra sugar that turns into fat, you know, because insulin will take all the extra sugar and put it into our fat cells, and it's turned into fat. So sugar is really, really the culprit here. You know, of course, there are some fats are better than other fats, you know, but making sure we're eating lots of protein and good fats first, and some fiber. You know, fiber will slow down the absorption of sugar into our bloodstream, so it's very protective. And so, yeah, so how much like protein do I need as an adult? You kind of have to go by your weight. So a simple way to know is just taking your weight in pounds, splitting it in half. And that would be a minimum requirement of grams of protein. So like, let's say I'm 140, that's 70 grams of protein a day, and split that up in 3 meals. That's like 25 grams per meal. And for metabolic health, we actually want to have 25, 25, 25, or 30, 30, 30. Like 25 is really a minimum, but you do want to have the same amount at each meal. It will keep you satisfied. It will slow down. So protein, fat, and fiber slow down the release of sugar into the bloodstream, right? So that's called macro balancing. So it's like having that balance in that meal. It will satisfy you. It will make you feel like actually more calm and clear-minded, as opposed to like having this big sugar rush, right? And then we feel like, and then we come crashing down 2 hours later and we want more sugar. So that is really key, like the breakfast, to stabilize our blood sugar. But we can talk, I can go back to my notes, because I wanted to just mention the different illnesses of blood sugar, what happens when we don't have stable blood sugar. Actually, like sugar can cause a lot of damage in the body when it's left unregulated. So what can happen, there's a few things that happen. It's like when we have high peaks of sugar and insulin. So every time there's lots of sugar, there's always going to be lots of insulin to bring it down. And over time, our bodies get tired, right? Like your pancreas is like secreting insulin and secreting insulin. And actually your cells become a little bit numb to insulin when there's too much. And we call that insulin resistance. So it means that like insulin cannot do its job as well anymore, because the cell is not as receptive. It lost some of its sensitivity to the hormone. Hormones are like a key, and the receptor is like a lock. And like you need the hormone to bring the sugar inside the cell. So these cells, and often happens when cells are enlarged. So they're bigger, you know, due to obesity. So these cells are now not responding, and ironically, the pancreas is just going to keep secreting more, because it's like, oh, it's not working, we need to secrete more, and it just keeps secreting more, and then you end up with hyperinsulinemia. I have a hard time with that word. So, and that causes a condition called insulin resistance. And then people end up with metabolic syndrome, meaning they have constant hyperglycemia, so too much sugar, and the insulin resistance that comes with that. And then they have high triglycerides, so like lots of cholesterol. The body uses cholesterol to try to protect you. That's a whole other conversation on cholesterol that we could have, that I love to share about cholesterol because it's not as bad as we think. And then also high blood pressure. So that's metabolic syndrome. So we go from like dysglycemia to insulin resistant to metabolic syndrome, which is like once you're in metabolic syndrome, you're pre-diabetic. So this is the 12 million of Canadians that we're talking about that are pre-diabetic. They have this high visceral fat around their waistline, and they've probably lost control of their their appetite. Their cravings is out of control because these fat cells secrete estrogen and secrete all kinds. They mess up our hunger and satiation hormones, and they really it's really hard once you're there. It's really hard to get out of it, right? So that's why we want to prevent that. And then once you're in a metabolic syndrome, pre-diabetic, then you have if you don't change your lifestyle, because this is all reversible, right? If you don't change your lifestyle, you have a high chance of becoming diabetic. And this is type 2 diabetes, which means it's when your blood sugar cannot go back to normal. It's constantly high. And then they will often, if you don't change your diet, they will prescribe a medication. And ironically, the medication stimulates your pancreas to secrete even more insulin. So these medications are really meant to be short term to protect you, because high blood sugar is really damaging. Sugar in the bloodstream left unchecked causes all kinds of oxidation and glycation, all these negative impact on our tissues and cells. So, in the short term, if someone can't manage their diabetes, the medication can help. But in the long term, the studies have shown that it doesn't help that much. It's about 30% of people that actually helps. So you really have to take hold of your health and manage your insulin and blood sugar if you have this kind of diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is completely different. It affects blood sugar, but not because of a lifestyle, because of an autoimmune condition. So it's completely different. It's a disease of the immune system where you have your antibodies attacking, your own cells attacking the beta cells of the pancreas and preventing them from producing insulin. So it's completely different disease, even though it has some of the same manifestations, in the sense that you have high blood sugar if you're not on the injections, right? Like this is where people need the injections of insulin or else they will die. So completely different, what's the word I'm looking for? Route, I guess, but similar
outcome.
Yes and no, because usually people with type 1, if they manage it with medical care, insulin, they're not going to have the obesity and all the other lifestyle symptoms. But some people do, right? Some people have both because they have a bad lifestyle. And a lot of people who really go on a insulin reducing diet and really balance their blood sugar, they have an easier time managing their type 1 diabetes. So even the type 1s can be really hard to manage if you're on a high carbohydrate, low protein diet. So balancing your blood sugar, it helps any kind of condition, whether it's type 1, type 2, or everything in between.
Yeah. We go back to the breakfast and fiber. You start and then,
Oh yeah. I wrote some notes and I was like, oh shoot, I feel like I'm skipping too quickly ahead. Yeah, we can talk about that. And I just want to give a shout out to this amazing woman called Jessyca Mebrahtu, who wrote this book, Glucose Revolution. And if you're struggling with your, blood sugar, I highly recommend this book. Yeah, she was actually part of she worked for the company that created the glucose monitor, the continuous glucose monitor that is used now to help people track their blood sugar, people with diabetes. And she was one of the first kind of case study group. And that's when she realized like the power of blood sugar, like the sugar in her blood and what it was doing to her mental health and to her physical health. And this is how she came to write this book to help people. And she's been helping so many people with, she has 10 hacks, and we will talk about them in a minute. A lot of them I was already doing with my clients, but there's definitely a couple new ones that were really eye-opening. I can show you. So she kind of went on this quest and started like comparing blood glucose monitors, after eating, let's say, carbs, lots of carbs, and if you ate carbs on an empty stomach and how it impacts your blood sugar, and then if you eat fiber and then eat the carbs, and how does that differentiate. And of course, every person's different. Like the way, like if you and I was thinking about that last night in my bed, I couldn't sleep. And this is the example I thought about. I'm like, if Leanne and I went for ice cream tonight and we both had like a big ice cream, our bodies would not necessarily process and react the same way to the sugar. Because let's say that you went for a 5K run before we met up for ice cream. You ran all the way there and your cells are hungry for glucose. So by the way, like glucose can also be used right away without insulin. If we're working out, or if we, some of it can be used right away to be used like as we're moving, as we're working, as we're thinking. Some of it is used right away. Not all of it is stored. But so let's say that you went for a 5K run and we have our ice cream, and you're also working out more regularly, so you're more metabolically fit than I am. And also, what else? Depending what you ate that day, if you ate lots of protein, and let's say I didn't. So many factors will influence how you and I will process the sugar from our ice creams. And I could go on to have a huge glucose spike and have, not feel so well after. And maybe you will be completely fine because your cells were hungry for glucose because you just went for that 5K run. So we have to keep that in mind. Like, everyone's different, and some people are more, metabolically flexible, and depending on our muscle mass too. I might, if you have more muscle than me, you will have more space to store all this extra sugar. So the more muscle we have, actually, the healthier we are, because muscle burns more energy, more fuel. So we can actually take in more calories, we can burn more sugar, we can, we're more flexible with our intake, because we're going to use it more efficiently the more muscle we have. So because of all these factors, it really varies from one person to another. But these studies are really fascinating, because this would be the same person. So it would be like eating, and I don't know if you can see.
It's hard to see.
Hard to see. Okay. So the first graph shows like eating rice and salmon without the fiber, and there's a pretty big glucose spike. Again, I think this is on herself, and she's pretty sensitive to glucose spikes. But then the second graph shows salmon first. Oh yeah, so she ate her salmon first, her protein, and then the rice, and there was much less of a spike. Same thing with fiber. So fiber will slow down the absorption of the sugars from the rice. But if you eat the rice first, so this is one of the biggest discoveries. It was like, depending the order of how we eat our food, it will have a different impact on our blood sugar, which can seem like a little bit like intense, to like, oh, I have to eat this first and that first. But in many cultures, it was custom to have like a little salad or a little bowl of soup before eating your main course. Mm-hmm. So eating veggies first will actually have a positive impact. She also says not to obsess, and like if you're eating a stir fry, you're not going to separate the grains of rice from the rest of your meal. But I think for people who are really struggling with their blood sugar, doing this for a while can really change their life. She shares a story about this man in Mexico who started just eating all his veggies first, brought lots of broccoli, and within a year, I think he lost 80 pounds in, I think it was 1 year, adding movement, adding all the hacks, that she talks about. So the savory breakfast is what we can go into the hacks since we're talking about it.
Yeah.
The savory breakfast is something that she does. I think it's really helpful. So to have the right amount of protein and fat, but going savory will actually also help you crave less sweets later on in the day, right? So focusing on things like eggs and Greek yogurt and eggs with veggies, a little bit of cheese or baked beans or, things like that. She has a lot of recipes in this book here, the Glucose Goddess Method. But, I think eggs is a big one. You can eat eggs a million different ways. My favorite breakfast right now is like toast with guacamole and smoked oysters.
Mm.
So I think it's like we have to really change how we see breakfast, because I think for a long time it's the croissants and the muffins and the granolas, and for some reason, and maybe because we wake up with like low blood sugar, a lot of us, because we are on this glycemic roller coaster, so a lot of us crave something sweet or just out of habit. But she really talks about keeping the breakfast savory, which will reduce cravings. So if you have this big, and by the way, eating less will not make you lose weight. And this is a big thing, like people who were applying these hacks and adding more veggies, so adding more fiber, adding an extra course to their meals, were actually losing more weight. So we often think there's this bad mindset about reducing calories and losing weight, which is another lie, because it's about the nutrients that we're getting from our food. And if we don't have enough protein in the morning, we will slow down our metabolism, because we have to understand that our hormones are made out of protein. So our thyroid hormone that controls our metabolism is made out of protein. So if I'm not giving my body the building blocks for it to produce the things to keep me healthy, not eating enough can actually slow down my metabolism if I'm not eating the right things. Also, not eating enough stresses the body, which spikes our cortisol, our stress hormone. And when we spike our cortisol, we actually increase our blood sugar, because that's the goal, that's the role of cortisol. It will increase our blood sugar so we can deal with the stress. So stress, inflammation, caffeine are all other factors that will increase our blood sugar apart from carbohydrates. So it's not only the carbs, it's also the cortisol, the stress hormone, inflammation in the gut. Sleep will also make us more hungry, it crave more things. And lack of sleep, not sleep, lack of sleep will mess with our hormones, or our satiation and hunger hormones.
What are things we could do so that we don't crave sugar when we first wake up?
Yeah. So if you're craving sugar when you first wake up, so first of all, I always tell people to hydrate. And maybe I do lemon water, so that lemon, I think you have to retrain your body, right? So at first it might not be so easy, but knowing that you're doing what's right. So hydrating, I think, moving the body in the morning is really important. But I think just, it's you have to kind of make a decision that in the morning you're going to nourish yourself with the macronutrients, the proteins, the fats, the complex carbs, and the fiber. And after that, you will feel satisfied and not crave. So I don't know if it's just habitual, if people wake up, if they wake up and they have low blood sugar, eating sugar will make you worse. I think just knowing the truth, maybe, because we've been told, people with low blood sugar have been told to eat sugar, and that's the worst thing they can do. They just stay on the roller coaster. They actually need the fat and protein, and maybe a tiny bit of carbs if they're really, really low. But interestingly, this doctor was talking about how people with low blood sugar symptoms, often on a glucose monitor, their blood sugar is actually not low, but they still have symptoms, which kind of indicates that it's just that this glycemic roller coaster from like never having a stable blood glucose, too much insulin. Yeah, so I think I promise that it gets easier if you put in the protein and fats, the right amount of protein, the fats, the fiber, and then, yes, you can have some carbs, absolutely, especially if you're not, overweight. If you're trying to lose weight, you want to really try to reduce those carbs in the morning, especially. But and when you eat lots of protein, like let's say I'm eating a full can of salmon and I'm eating half an avocado and I'm eating all these things, you actually are pretty full. By the time you're like, oh, I'm going to eat an apple, like you might be so full that you can only eat half an apple. And it's very eye-opening when you start to put the right fuel in your body and then you realize, oh, that's how it feels to be like really satiated with the right things. And then it will be easier to like make it to lunch. And what I tell people is like, okay, if people bring donuts into work and then like you really want that donut, maybe your blood sugar is not like fully stabilized yet, right? You're in that transition phase. It doesn't take that long, by the way. Like most of my clients will be like within even a couple days, they'll be like, wow, like I feel so much better now that I'm eating like a really nutrient dense breakfast, and they actually don't need their second cup of coffee and they don't need to reach for the donut at work or whatever. But if you want that donut, you like cut it in half, give half to your friend, and then keep the other half for after lunch. It's not that you can't have sugar ever, because that's not realistic, right? um, I think enjoying all the things is really important, but we have to understand that some things are highly processed. And like, do you want a donut that has 50 grams of sugar, or maybe you want a homemade cookie that has 10 grams of sugar? Like, like what's better for you?
Mm.
And as you reduce the sugar, you will crave it less and less, and then the sugary thing will taste disgusting eventually if you're patient with yourself. And you won't feel well when you eat it.
Yeah.
But if you want a dessert, I love dessert. I love chocolate. I love all the things. So you have it after your meal. It will not spike your blood sugar as much as on an empty stomach, right? The fiber, the protein, the fat, all those things take a long time to digest in your stomach. So by the time it reaches your intestine to be brought into the bloodstream, it will slow down the effects of the carbohydrates, the sugars. It will slow down everything. So it will not, should not. I mean, everyone's different, as I said, but spike your blood sugar if you're having, one cookie after your lunch or dinner. Not after breakfast, not a good idea. Keep the breakfast like really solid so that, you don't keep cooking sugar all day.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's one of the hacks, like eat sweets after a meal. Other hacks of her hacks, Jessy's hacks. My name's Jessie too, Jess. Eating fiber first, we said that one, right? Like eating some veggies first. Moving after a meal. So if we move after a meal within an hour, like if we, take some time to digest, but we go for a walk after a lunch or dinner, we will use some of that glucose and we will lower, she calls it flattening the curve, flattening your glucose curve. So if you were to look on a monitor, it would look more stable than as opposed to a roller coaster. I wrote these down. So let me just go back to my little page here. I wrote them down somewhere. So apple cider vinegar is another one. So they've discovered that the acetic acid in apple cider vinegar slows down the absorption of sugar, or the breakdown. So then it has, slows down the absorption as well, because it's not broken down as quickly. When in the presence of acetic acid, the glucose, or the starches, sorry, cannot be broken down as efficiently. So it slows down the breakdown and the release. And then also the acetic acid encourages our muscles to take in the glucose. So it has like a double benefit. And the numbers are pretty staggering in like reducing the glucose curves in people who have the glucose monitors. So
Would
that
would like having some lemon or lime like do
does
this?
not have the same effect because it's citric acid. But lemon and lime is really good for digestion because it's acidic. Anything acidic will really help you digest your food really well, and also stimulates the liver to produce bile, which is to digest our fat. So it's, lemon is really great. So you would take like a glass of water with a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar shortly before, like just 10 minutes before your meal. And we're talking like you have to see this as medicine, as opposed to going on these like really harsh medications that have side effects. This is for people who are really struggling and who really need extra help in balancing their blood sugar. And some people will say, oh, that's really gross, like I can't do that. But it's like, well, some medicine is not supposed to taste good. You have to see it as medicine because it really is. And if you don't like it, just start with a teaspoon and then increase it slowly so you can get to like a tablespoon. And you would typically do it with like your biggest meal, or if you're planning to have dessert after your meal, you could try that and see how you feel. And I think it's just important to realize, like, to take note of how we feel after we eat certain things, and to just be honest with ourselves, like, oh, you know what, I don't feel so good when I eat this pasta or this kind of food. And to be aware of how foods make us feel, because there's a thing too called nocturnal hypoglycemia, where people will wake up in the middle of the night with low blood sugar and they will want to eat. And it's ironically, it's usually around 2 or 3 a.m. I'm sure there's science behind that to explain why. But yeah, that's the thing. If we don't eat enough protein or eat too many carbs and we're on this roller coaster, we can wake up in the middle of the night and want to eat something. And if you do, like, make sure you eat something that has protein or fiber. Okay, this is another hack. Dress your carbs. So she calls it clothe your carbs. Don't let them go naked. Naked carbs are dangerous. So if you're having a piece of chocolate cake, you would have a handful of almonds, because almonds have fiber, and anything that has fiber or fat or protein. Not all three. It doesn't have to be all three. Although, like, let's say you're having Greek yogurt. Yogurt often has like a little bit of fat and protein, right? A lot of foods have a combination of different macronutrients. So you would, slow down the release of sugar by adding some fat or protein or fiber to your dessert. That's another hack. If, because it's not, it's ideal to have dessert after a meal, but it's not always realistic. Let's say you're going to a birthday party and you want to enjoy the cake, and, maybe you ask your friend, hey, you got some almonds?
Right. Or bring them.
Bring them with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And what are the other hacks? Second, I think we mentioned most of them. Movement, and opting for a savory snack is always ideal. So if you do need a snack, so by the way, snacking is like a very modern day concept. So hasn't been very long since we started snacking as a society, as a culture. Like, this just was not a thing before. People ate 2 to 3 meals a day. I don't even remember. I was telling my husband, I don't remember bringing a snack to school when I was little. This was like late 80s. I want to ask my mom because I'm not sure. Maybe I just forget. But I remember, we would go to school, come back home for lunch, and I don't remember bringing snacks with me. But it could be my memory, so I'm gonna find out. But it's snacking. If we can stay away from it, it's better because we give our bodies that time for fasting. And then we raise our glucagon, our fat-burning hormone, which is what we want. We want to be able to have good glucagon and, some insulin, but have that balance where we can burn fat when we need to. In between meals, we're burning fat instead of reaching for a snack. And it's just really habitual, to be honest. Like, if we eat enough at meals and we stabilize our blood sugar, we will not need snacks of course, if you're like really struggling and you can't focus, like it's a good idea to have a snack and grab a half apple with almond butter, like making sure you have those 3 macronutrients when you grab a snack. And savory is even better, you know, having some veggies with hummus or any kind of savory snack will not trigger the release of insulin as much as a sweet snack. So we want to always try to, you know, reduce the insulin and raise our glucagon so that we're more metabolically flexible. Yeah. Any questions?
Not that I can think of. Yeah, they come as you talk.
So, you know, when we balance our blood sugar, so what does that feel like, right? Like some people have never really felt that. You know, they're in chronic stress, chronic hyperinsulinemia, that word I can't say. And they don't even really know how that feels. And that's really sad because honestly, you will feel so much better once you balance your blood sugar. You will feel like a constant energy, you know, like a clear mind, can focus, you can work for 4 or 5 hours. You know, you can go past lunch and realize like, oh my goodness, it's lunchtime. You can go 5 to 6 hours and not feel super hungry, like feel like you're okay. Or even if you feel hungry, you're able to keep working and you're able to push yourself until lunch, or you're able to keep going because your glucagon is doing its job. It's turning your stores into energy for you. So you don't need to be snacking. You don't need to be reaching for those granola bars. Yeah, your mood is better, fewer mood swings, less irritable, less nervous, normal thirst and urination, because that's a sign of like diabetes or hyperglycemia, too much sugar in the blood, you know, when we're always thirsty and peeing. And then a healthy appetite, you know, not always craving sugar is a big one, right? Like I remember, you know, not that long ago meeting up with a friend for coffee in a coffee shop, and there's like, you know, all the donuts and sweet treats in the coffee shop. And like back in the day, like that would have been impossible for me to resist. Like I would have not only had one, I would have probably had 2 donuts. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And and probably not feel well until I've had them because I was so dysglycemic. And like sitting in a coffee shop and looking at those donuts and not having one desire to eat them at all because you feel good, you feel satisfied, you feel nourished, you feel content. And to not crave that is like, for me, it's a huge victory. And I know that if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
I was a hardcore sugarholic.
Yeah. How long did it take you, like once you started like some process, how long did it take you to feel like that?
That's a good question. I think, you know, I think I got healthier and healthier, like slowly, but I think I still didn't know how much protein, or I was still like sweet tooth, even though I was eating healthy.
Yeah.
I wasn't necessarily consuming enough protein.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big element for me. That's what kind of changed everything. And especially for women, I think it's a huge piece of the puzzle, especially for women getting closer to menopause. They say like 40 grams of protein in the morning can really change their life. Can really like reset their circadian rhythm and balance their hormones. Like just really, let's remember hormones are made mostly out of protein. So, but I would say like once I went to nutrition school and I was really committed, you know, and yeah, doing all the things. Um, I think it became more than maybe cyclical, where like I would maybe crave it more around my period, but not all the time.
Okay.
And I still do like around my period, I'll want chocolate, but I don't need a full chocolate bar like before. I don't sit and like don't necessarily need to eat like tons of sugar. Let's remember our body has 5 grams of sugar floating around in our bloodstream. So anytime we eat more than 5 grams, like let's on an empty stomach, you can like even like an apple has like 19 grams of sugar, like the sweet apples, because they've been bred to have more sugar and less fiber, to be really tasty and somewhat addictive, I guess. Sadly, so eating that much, even though it's a fruit and it's healthy, it will still trigger, insulin release, and can mess with your blood sugar, even though it's a fruit. That's why it's better to eat fruit after a meal. But what was I going to say? Yeah, so like I would like before I would eat like probably 30, I don't know how many grams, but lots and lots of grams of sugar. But now I can eat one piece of chocolate and be like, for the most part, usually like satisfied with that after a meal. And I don't often feel good if I have it just out of the blue. If I have chocolate, like let's say 85 and up percent of cocoa, won't bother me as much. But if I have like, let's say anything below 80% cocoa, so meaning 20 or more percent sugar, I won't necessarily feel good if I have more than a little piece, and then I'll grab, my trick is I will grab some nuts, and if I don't feel good, I'll immediately eat some nuts and I'll feel better instantly. For me, really, really helps. Yeah. So honestly, I don't know. I think for me, it was a very slow and steady thing, but it doesn't have to be slow. Like if you have the right approach and tactics, you can deal with this. I think because I was missing a lot of information, but if with the right information, I think you can tackle it pretty quickly. Yeah. I mean, some people are more addictive personality, right?
Yeah.
So for whatever reason, it might be harder for some people than for other people. Yeah, totally. I'm just looking here about, do you want us to talk a little bit about the addiction side of how so yeah, I'm not an expert on addiction, but I think when we eat sugar, so we have to differentiate between, I guess, natural sugar from fruits, which is ideal. So if you want something sweet, it's always ideal to have fruit, and not have it after a meal. It's not going to affect your blood sugar. So Canadian, and one trick too to eat healthy is to eat seasonally and locally, right? So the more like seasonally, locally we eat, usually the healthier for our bodies. The simpler, the fresher it is. Like when we think about tropical fruit, they're very high in sugar, but they don't come from here. So like bananas, pineapples, mangoes, all these fruits are quite high in sugar. So they should really eaten in small quantities. When it comes to apples, pears, peaches, cherries, berries, all the fruits that grow here, they're a little bit lower in sugar, especially the berries. So you can eat more of them. And like berries are the best. They're quite low in sugar compared to other fruits. Citrus is also another, although it doesn't grow here, but it's like grapefruits, even some oranges, depending, have less sugar than, let's say, the other tropical fruit that I mentioned. So it's always good to eat fruit. So then, the processed food has this like refined sugar, right? Denatured and in quantities that are just really not natural for our bodies. So, one thing is like the high fructose corn syrup that was used to sweeten most of the processed foods. Actually, fructose. So we didn't talk too much about fructose. We talked mostly about glucose, because glucose is found in those complex carbs. So it's found in a lot of foods. Fructose is only in fruits, or mostly in fruits. And it's actually taken from your intestine into your bloodstream, and it's processed in the liver. So the fructose will turn into glycogen in the liver, so a store of sugar that we can be used for later use, but only in the liver, not in the muscles. So there's less space for fructose, and also only about 100 grams, I believe. So once your liver is full of glycogen, the fructose will be turned to fat. And then, so an overconsumption of fructose can lead to high cholesterol and even fatty liver. So people who consume a lot of processed food, Coca-Cola, all the things that have a lot of fructose, and like the processed food has even more than fruits, right? More fructose of this kind of chemical fructose, you could say. 'Cause I don't like to compare, Coca-Cola with an orange. I don't like that.
Yeah, different.
The orange has like minerals and vitamins, and
Yeah.
it's good for you. Like I want people to understand, like, fruits are good for you in moderation. But if you are someone who's trying to lose weight, you have to be aware of like how much fructose you're consuming, and you have to, if you want to lose weight, like inevitably you have to reduce those sugars until you reach your healthy weight goal, right? So fructose is metabolized differently in the body, which I actually just learned recently. I don't remember learning this in school for some odd reason, or just maybe I was sleeping during the class. I don't know.
I don't think
But,
yeah.
and then the third monosaccharide is galactose, so lactose is made of galactose and glucose, and when it's split with the enzyme with lactase, the galactose is a monosaccharide, but I actually don't even know how that one's processed. That's something I have to research more. So I don't know, but generally we don't. I mean, I don't know. Kids consume a lot of milk still to this day, so yeah, I'm gonna find out more about that. But yeah, we were the addictive side of sugar, right?
Yeah.
So so when we eat sugar, it releases dopamine. So feel good neurotransmitter. So we actually just we're very, like, we love dopamine, and we just want more and more and more. So one thing I was thinking about is how I like to think about how can we go get some dopamine in a healthier way, as opposed to over-consuming sugar and then putting on some unwanted fat, right? So I think accomplishing things, it like releases dopamine. So is there a small task that I can do right now, even if it's like making my bed or cleaning my bathroom, or like little tasks will also help us release dopamine. And I think when it comes to addiction, it's important to realize that addiction comes from isolation. And actually, I think sugar will give you that quick fix, right? It will make you feel better in the moment, but then it won't last, and then you'll want more and more. So that's like that addiction side of it. And I think maybe when we crave sugar, it's important to stop and say, okay, what do I really need? Do I need to like talk to a friend, feel heard? Do I need to go for a walk outside, or even drink water? Being well hydrated will do wonders for our blood sugar. So just really asking what you need, because often we need a hug. Like we release like oxytocin, which is another feel-good hormone when we hug someone. So yeah, don't underestimate the power of a good hug, and being connected to people will help you deal with addiction in general. Yeah, I don't like have a whole lot on that, but
That's so cool. But this is so cool that you say that. I don't know if you've been listening to my podcast, but like a big trend that I try to encourage is that support, and like the opposite of isolation, like quality relating and good building community, whether it's your family, your friends, your neighbors, whatever, like that helps build the health, like our healthiness. It gives us purpose. It gives us, like to do all the things. And like just me thinking of having a meal with my friends, no matter not quite no matter what I eat, but just eating a meal with my friends gives me so much, like, or my family, like it gives so much, So
Yes.
and then when I was a child, like having supper with my family and our friends came a lot for supper too. And just like the memories from that and how important it was for me,
Yeah. And that's the thing with food. It's more than fuel. It's also community. It's social. It's environmental. It's like it's tied to every aspect of our life. It's such a huge part of our life. I mean, we do it 3 times a day. And not to mention the prep that goes into it and the cleanup that goes into it.
Yeah.
It's like such a big part. And I think if we're eating alone, and if we're not, and I know some people live by themselves, and it might be harder. So, you might have to go out of your way to make sure that a few times a week you really connect with people around food. I think it's really vital. Um, but yeah, I think we were really meant to take those moments to be nourished more than at a physical level. Like that's why people pray before they eat, and they talk about their day, they connect with others. And that way your soul is nourished and your spirit and your body. And I think, and that's what holistic nutrition really means, is like connecting the whole person. And that's really my desire, is when I had like kind of a moment of clarity about Sunshine Nutrition, my business. I was walking around a pond and the sun was rising, and I just heard it in my spirit, like Sunshine Nutrition. And I just really felt like it was about gathering women to help them reconnect to each other, to the earth, and to their creator, and to themselves, But it was really like that connection, because I do think when we have this like this satisfaction in our souls, we won't necessarily go for the quick fixes, right? If we're truly like satisfied, it will be easier to not try to fill the void with other things that are temporary. But I think relationships are really what is eternal and will last forever, is those bonds with the people that we love. So yeah, and I was talking to you about like how, when we're born, we connect with our mom. Whether we're breastfed or bottle fed, we're connecting with our mom, and the milk is sweet. So I think craving sweet is completely natural. I think what's not natural is what the food system has done to like our sweet foods, have made them extra sweet, extra processed, and have really, what's the word? Um, corrupted them,
Yeah.
or in a way corrupted them. So, but really, like, craving sweetness is actually natural. We just don't want to be craving it all the time
Yeah.
and being hangry. We just don't want that. But like, even, I made scones the other day, and like, it's okay it's good to eat sweet things every now and then and to enjoy them. We just don't want to be ruled and controlled by them, right? We want to be able to like have control over our cravings, so that they don't control us, and that that's freedom, I think, at the end of the day. And yeah, I love that picture of like the newborn baby, like connecting with mom and being like really nourished at all levels. And I think um, to gather around food is that opportunity to remember that we need each other, and we're better together, and we feel better when we're seen and heard, and we feel this peace, of knowing we're not alone. And I think it's like, it's this epidemic of loneliness, this epidemic of diabetes, and it's like, well, maybe they're all connected.
No, for sure they are. Yeah, we know. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm having a gathering. I invited you to the last one, but you couldn't come.
Yeah.
Maybe one time you will show up at my sunshine gathering. I'm every last Friday of the month. I want to gather women. And I remember in December, I think it was November, December, I'm watching this video of women gathering, and I'm in tears, And I was like, well, why don't I do that? I'm watching women gather, and it's like I'm longing for that, of like being with women, and like, and I think like for life, like finding people that you can gather with, and it's like for the long term, where you like grow old together. My friend told me this recently. She's like, we're gonna grow old together. And I was like, yes.
I always talk to my girlfriends about growing old together. I'm like, we're
I
going to be the
know.
ones who are knitting. And,
Yes.
if someone has like a passion, I'm like, you're going to be like, we're going to be old together. You're still going to be doing that. And like,
Yeah,
just planning to be together basically.
absolutely.
And like encouraging the other person to do what they love. It feels so good.
Mhm.
Like, why not have a friend who's like, yeah, and your podcast, la la la, and like I'm like, oh, like it gives me a boost,
Yeah.
so
Feeling appreciated, so it gives you
yeah,
the strength to keep going and
yeah, exactly, because it's a lot of work, but
yeah, yeah.
so it's like yeah, it's so good to have that friend that it really is women who do that, like as a group of
Mhm.
together, so
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
I find that women groups, like the women stay in our lives long. At
Mhm.
least that's just the way it is for me. So
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and like I remember watching this movie where women were washing their clothes by the river together, like in another country where, some countries still have these like rituals, because they haven't been as industrialized. But, I think for a long time, in smaller communities, women had this opportunity because they worked from home mostly to see each other like daily and yeah, they would do their laundry together, or I babysit your kids, you babysit my kids, or just like doing life more together like regularly, which I find is more difficult in this day and age because of the ways our cities are built, and because of how women have more responsibilities now, and and some is good and some is like makes it harder for women to really feel um bonded, I guess, to
Mhm.
to their to each other. So yeah, yeah, and if people want support, like I'll give you my contact, and you can
Yeah.
add it to the notes, and it would be an honor to. I love to walk with people and to help them reach their health goals. And so yeah, I offer like a personalized program, 3 months program called Flourish, where we address blood sugar balancing, hormone balancing, microbiome health, and just really create a plan that works with their individuality. And yeah, and then I walk with them until they reach their health goals and feel like they can flourish. They can move on with their lives because their health is like they've kind of understood, so like the education part of it, understand how their bodies work, what they need, and then it's much easier to be healthy and to feel good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
accountability can help so many people.
for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you were asking about groups. Um, that's something that I could maybe like start if there's
Oh, right. I was like, do
interest.
you know? So, there's oh, what's his name? James Maxwell, and also my
Mhm,
naturopath who's been on my podcast.
mm,
They talk about like the benefit of doing group like care together, and then you
mhm.
get like a whole seminar instead of like a doctor who has, honestly 7 minutes to talk to you,
Sure.
and
Yeah,
repeating the same thing 60 times to people per day.
right.
Like not quite that much, but like, like they see 60 people a day and it's really short. And so like
Yeah,
then you'd have your 8 or 12 clients in front of you, and then you talk about, the problem that you have in common.
yeah.
And and then there's like a group that builds from that, because
Sure.
then they show up for one another as well.
Yes.
They don't feel alone in their, diabetes or whatever it is that
Yeah,
they're diagnosed with, so that it's not
yeah.
doom and gloom and oh my gosh, and then you can give each other tips and things like that. And even like in the pregnancy world, especially in the high risk pregnancy world, so like not exactly what midwifery looks like here in Ontario, but or the tradition, like the what we have, like the mainstream stuff that we've got right now, but like in the States it's like reduced preterm birth and labor and things like
Mm,
that, so
yeah.
it's doing a lot. And that's
To
why
be more supported. Yeah,
yeah.
totally. And I do believe it's the way to go for sure. Like that's my goal eventually, is to like have a small group that I walk with. And yeah, and then they also have each other, which is more helpful than just me, and then it's actually win-win. less work for me.
Yeah.
And then they also benefit from having each other, and they can chat and share and encourage each other. Yeah.
Some people like after their 3 month session or whatever it was, they go dancing together because they don't want to stop the group. Sometimes the groups really jive, or you just meet one person in the group and then that really jives.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. I like that.
Group sessions on sugar would do to the differences it would do, like alone care versus together care.
Right. Yeah, that would be really interesting, because if we really believe that connection is a part to reducing addiction and craving and all this stuff, then yeah, I'm sure it would have a lot of positives. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jess. You gave me a lot of information. I'm like, okay, like just talking to you, I'm like, okay, I can do better.
Oh.
This is my vice. Like someone last week was like, "What's your vice?" And I'm like, "It's like dark chocolate."
Oh, yeah. But that's not a vice. That's really good for you.
Maybe not first thing in the morning, though.
No, maybe not first thing in the morning, because it still has sugar. But dark chocolate is really good. There's a famous endocrinologist that recommends dark chocolate for women after lunch, because she says it helps stabilize cortisol, because so anything that's really rich in minerals, which is cocoa is really rich in minerals and has good fats as well. So it does have a positive impact on our endocrine system. Yeah, chocolate is like a superfood.
Okay,
it's really amazing.
Cut it
after lunch.
I'm gonna try. Cut it in the morning and have it after lunch.
You can do it.
Yeah.
And maybe, so if you figure out how much protein you need for breakfast, and you maybe increase your protein and fat for breakfast, and lower, I don't know what you eat for breakfast. Are you
I don't eat right away for breakfast, but when I work, I notice that if I eat for if I eat first thing, or not first thing, but early on in the morning, like I feel so good for the rest of the day. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so maybe it does stabilize your blood sugar. It's really like individual, because fasting is a stress on the body, but stressing the body makes us more resilient. So like some level of stress is good, right? But if it's like you push yourself, like too much stress is not good. So you want to kind of find that sweet spot where, like, let's say you're fasting and it's like for you it's 14 hours or whatever, from like dinner to breakfast. But yeah, finding the place where like this is the best time to eat breakfast, where I feel good and energized for the day, and I'm not overdoing the fasting, but I'm also not eating too early and breaking my fast too early, where I could really boost that fat burning hormone glucagon, because like fasting has benefits. But I think like the fasting culture, it's always extremes in our society, right? It's always very extreme. So like the intermittent fasting was like very extreme, but if the person is already stressed out, that might not be the solution for them. And for a lot of women who need a lot of protein in the morning, if they're fasting too much, then sometimes they don't eat enough protein, and then they end up losing muscle as well as fat. You don't want to lose muscle, that's not a good thing. So like that's one thing I've learned. I worked with a nutrition group where they used a body composition scale. So you see your muscle mass and your fat mass, and you see everything. You don't just see the fat mass, the weight, because if you weigh yourself on a normal scale, you don't know if you lost muscle or fat.
It's true.
You might know, like, okay, I really feel like I lost some fat. Great. But if you're not eating the right things, you can lose just as much muscle, and that's not good. And I've seen so many people come into the office and then they weigh themselves and they seem discouraged. And I'm like, oh, what's up? And they're like, oh, I gained weight. I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, maybe you gained some muscle. And sure enough, like most of the time they've gained muscle and they've lost a bit of fat. And they felt discouraged, and I'm like, you should be so encouraged. This is so good. You're becoming healthier and healthier. So the scale is like really, you have to be very careful with a traditional scale and not focus on that.
Like our how women are told that we have to look a certain way. Like it's even who, like, I'm not obsessed about how I look because of how my mom raised me. And like I'm still like, no, I'm gonna weigh myself once a year. That's it.
Once a year.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. Yeah, I never owned the scale. Like I'm lucky in some ways with all my sugar addiction that I never gained weight because I was an athlete. So that kind of saved me. So I never had weight problems. I had mental health problems because of lack of protein. Neurotransmitters are made out of protein. So, if you're not eating protein, eventually you will have mental health problems.
Right.
So, yeah.
And you don't sleep well when you don't eat protein. That was a problem for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. Protein is the only thing that we cannot make. So we can make fat. We can turn sugar into fat. We can turn fat into sugar. We can even turn protein into sugar, but we cannot use sugar or fat to make protein. So that's the only food that we absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, need to consume daily, or else things go south. It's bad news. You think it's like everything is made of protein, from our muscles to our skin to our hair to our hormones to our immune cells, everything. The sugar is for fuel, the fat is for protection, and everything else it's mostly protein.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's so that I just also want to tell the listener that Jess gives the best book recommendations. So because the book that you've recommended to me a year or two ago, I got it, and then I was like, I need to live with, like, I have to have a copy of this book. Like,
Which one?
The Hormone Cure by Sarah Gottfried.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's so good, so easy to read, so easy to understand. And so then you basically said the same things about Jessie and Choupé. And so, like, I'm already getting them from the library.
Oh, yeah. And you can find this at the library. And she writes in such a very, like, anybody can understand this. She has, like, the best analogies. She compares the mitochondria to her grandfather shoveling coal in a train. She's got, like, really, she's really, really, really smart and clever and able to translate scientific information into, like, very understandable for everyday people.
Yeah.
So it's really great.
It's so
Yeah. So
awesome. Okay, well, thank you, Jessyca. I'll put all the information in the show notes, and then
thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's been an honor.
Oh yeah, good. Okay, thank you to the listener. Have a good day.